Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Reach out to me directly for pricing at tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Today, we're discussing one of the most fascinating new chronographs of 2021. This is the Omega Speedmaster Chronoscope, resurrecting the image of a bygone era. As you can see, a triple scale dial and bezel, and a name from the Go-Go 2000s. The watch is 43 millimeters in diameter in bronze gold, a new material for the 2021 model year. 43 in diameter, 13 millimeters thick, and a relatively compact 48.6 millimeters from lug-to-lug tip, with a broad 21 millimeter spacing between the lugs. On the wrist, it does feel like a precious metal watch. There's more mass here than something like, say, a steel Speedmaster of comparable size. It's not as thick as I would have expected, and that's mainly down to the use of a manual wind movement. So while the bezel is cantilevered out and it could hook a very tight sleeve, for the most part, this watch should sit underneath cuffs. I could recommend it for a wrist as small as 15 centimeters in circumference. Taking a look at the strap, it's of high grade, dark brown calfskin. It has a sheer cut side showing the layers of leather. It has a slightly ecru aged colored contrasting binding stitch. And then we have the bronze gold buckle, and you can see that it features a combination of satin, media blasting, and polish externally. The pin is polished. The buckle is a combination of satin on its side, media blasting across its top, and then polishing on the bevel and on the Omega logo. Attention to detail is a strong suit with this one. Familiar case design, beveled inward and beveled outward. That's called the lyre style lug. Omega fans know it well. It's been around since the early 1960s. We have a case profile borrowed from the Speedmaster Professional with a little bit of a sheer guard shouldering for the chronograph pushers as well as the crown. Case band is satin, the bevel is polished, the underside of the bezel is polished, and here's a difference relative to the steel version of the same watch. The steel chronoscope features an aluminum insert on its bezel. This features a ceramic insert. So what we have here is a ceramic bezel insert featuring a tachymeter scale that's used to gauge the speed of an object. You use the chronograph as the other part of that equation. We have a sapphire crystal that is dramatically domed to give the look of a vintage plexi. Inboard, we have a telemeter scale, which is used to gauge distance, so tachymeter for speed, telemeter for distance, and then finally a pulsation scale. So the way the pulsation scale works is, we'll just reset everything, you grasp the patient's pulse, start the chronograph, and then once you count 30 pulsations, you stop the chronograph. So let's say that's 30 right there. You look at the scale and you can see it says 200. So that's a very high pulse rate. But the pulsation scale works just like that. Start the chrono, count to 30, stop the chrono, look at the scale. Triple scale, an exotic look. You don't see it too often. It's rarely used and even less frequently used successfully, as on a smaller watch, it tends to create a busy dial. Not so here. This 43 millimeter watch allows the dial to breathe. We have lovely rose gold hands, including leaf-style hands for the hours and minutes. We have a set of beautifully polished, applied rose gold Arabic numerals. We have a tone-on-tone dial design where you can see that the sub-registers are not exactly silver, but a sort of off-white, a nice complementary tone that matches the earth tones of this watch. About this bronze gold, something you should know, technically it is 9-karat gold. It is 37.5% gold. It also includes palladium and silver. The combination of these materials, and you should also note, it is hallmarked, but the combination of these materials results in a color that's somewhere between rose gold and bronze, and an immense amount of corrosion resistance. So that's the purpose of this unusual medley, this alloy that you will find on no other brand's watches. Now, if you look carefully, you can see that the center dial is actually stepped up. There's a little well for the hour track, and then the outermost scale for seconds and minutes. That too is stepped. There's a set of coaxial hands over at 3 o'clock. You can see that register is used to read chrono minutes as well as hours, which maintains a clean vintage-inspired twin register dial. Turn it all over and you can see one of the reasons this watch is so thin. Omega's become increasingly comfortable with the ideal of manual wind movements on its current generation of watch, and that's exactly what you have right here with the 9908. It's basically the 9900 chronograph movement with the rotor and the winding bridge removed. So the base specs are pretty much the same. 2 barrels, 60 hours of power reserve. We have a full balance bridge with a free sprung balance for toughness. We have a column wheel, you can see it right there, vertical clutch chronograph, and that column wheel makes for a really crisp feel. The vertical clutch makes for smooth engagement because there's no play in a vertical clutch. Also, because there's no play in a vertical clutch, if you want to leave the chronograph running with the vertical clutch, you can safely do so with no hazard to the movement. Now, it has a 60-hour power reserve, but there's another advantage to the twin barrels. They release torque very evenly and consistently. So whereas a single barrel movement, even one with a longer power reserve than this, is going to see a big balance amplitude drop-off after 24 hours, here you don't really get that, and that's down to the twin barrel setup. The hairspring is silicon, and along with an anti-magnetic escapement, this watch is over 15,000 Gauss anti-magnetic, effectively amagnetic. It does have a coaxial escapement. This is the latest tri-level version, perfecting George Daniels' original idea. It makes for less maintenance, better precision, greater durability, and more stability of timekeeping in between services. It also helps to extend power reserve, and it beats away at the silicon hairspring specific vibration rate of 25,200 vibrations per hour that you'll see across all Swatch Group watches using silicon hairsprings. It pivots on 44 joules, and it has a combination of black polished screws, blackened screws that are literally black, spiral arabesque Côte de Genève. This 44 joule movement includes engine turning on the base plate. As you can see, black polish on the column wheel. Lots to love. All of this 50 meters water resistant. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. If you're wondering what this dial text means, master chronometer, the answer is it goes beyond the COSC chronometer standards. Yes, this watch is tested to those, but the movement is cased up, tested in 6 positions. It's tested for power reserve. It's tested for shock resistance. It's tested for water resistance. It's tested for anti-magnetic resistance. And yes, chronometry is tested in 6 positions as a cased watch, not the 5 positions for the bare movement that you find with the COSC. This watch, in other words, is the full package.